Hi, fellow future teacher type humanoids. I've been shadowing Mr. Adams for too long. Alright, so, discussion board tree. Part 1. In what ways could you vary your instruction to ensure you are reaching all the various learning styles you may have in the classroom? Very difficult, especially given the number of students that each high school teacher has. However, in the class you can play games, do a systematic review, play a review game. You can do projects, whether that be individual or group. You can show films. If it's for homework, you can give them reading assignments, question and answer assignments, interviews. You could have them interview someone. You could have them talk to somebody else. Projects could be anything from a paper to a poster board to a PowerPoint to a documentary, anything that suits that child's type of learning. Something that Mr. Adams at Laney High School does is a thought of the day, so that way the kids are required to use that little bitty frontal lobe they have and get it working, get it moving, which I think is great, especially for the high school setting. It's not you're just memorizing what your teacher is giving you. You actually have to think and formulate thoughts. They have 4 thoughts of the day throughout the week, and they turn them in on Fridays. And the thought of the day is a quote that's thought-provoking based on the time period that they're studying, or the topic that they're studying. We've been doing the American Revolution and then the Constitution, amendments and stuff like that. So I think that's a really good way to put the kids kind of back into that time frame to kind of think outside of what they just need to memorize for the test. Part 2... Well, to summarize part 1, there's all kinds of ways that you can do it. You just kind of have to get to know your students and figure out how they learn best, which I've learned a lot from Mr. Adams. So whoever gets him next, you're lucky. Pay attention. He knows what's up. All right, so part 2. What role do graphic organizers play in the learning environment? Venn diagrams, KDL charts, yada, yada, yada. So me, personally, I'm a visual learner for the most part. So anything that Mr. Adams has up in his classroom, I notice because I'm like, oh, I would want that if I were a student. But I've also had to pay attention to other things that other students need to learn. However, if you are a visual learner, we did a compare and contrast between it was a Venn diagram for the Patriots and the Loyalists. That was incredibly helpful because there was some overlap on what they thought, and there was like a gray area. There wasn't a whole lot of overlap, but there was a gray area that both of them did, or both of them had in common, or troubles that they ran into. So it wasn't necessarily just thought processes. It was the whole Revolutionary War. We did a bubble chart or a spider chart. I don't know what they call them now, but the different types of amendments. And there was 3 different sections, and each one had 4 to 5 arms coming off of it, and the kids had to put down which amendments fell in those bubbles, and those were incredibly helpful to me as an adult. So I think that's something great. And just like the chart that we had to create, the 3 branches of government, I know that in my high school classroom, they had a separation of each branch and a description of what each one did, and they had little pictures, much like the one that I created. And it was incredibly helpful having it at the front of the classroom, because I still remember what each branch does and where they're located and how many people, etc., based on that chart at the front of the classroom. So I definitely think graphic organizers, visuals, those can be very, very helpful. And then what types of considerations must be made when planning to use computers in a classroom? I've ran into this while I've been subbing this semester, and also in Mr. Adams' room. Mr. Adams doesn't have computers, doesn't even have a location for computers. Not at all. So definitely, whether you have computers available or the space for computers is something to take into account. While I'm subbing, some of the kids can take computers home, some of them can't. Some schools assign a laptop to each student. You have to make sure that there's space and there's laptops provided, and then if they're going to be doing projects on computers in the classroom, it's like I said, how much space, also what filters and capabilities those particular computers have. As a teacher, you also have to think about the monitoring capability. So if you have a classroom full of 30 kids, 30 plus kids, you don't want to give each one of them a laptop because you can't watch. So if you have a row of 5 computers and you divide the class into groups and say group 1 gets to work on the computers today, or one person from each group works on the computers. So it all depends on what you're doing and the capabilities that you have. If it's an at-home assignment that's to be done on a computer, you have to take into account whether or not the student has their own computer, whether or not they have internet access, whether or not the school has provided laptops to take to and from class. It all just kind of depends. I know a lot of kids now are sending their teachers assignments either through Edmodo, or Mr. Adams a lot of times just has them submit assignments via Google Drive. So, but he also keeps an option open to just hand in a paper copy of the assignment just in case you don't have computer access. So that's something to take into account. And that's it. Hope for some good feedback. See you guys.